I want you to pay close attention to this next item. A Finnish member of parliament, Dr. Päivi Räsänen, had previously served as the Minister of Interior and the head of the Christian Democratic Party, and she is facing 3 criminal charges for hate speech. Now, her crime is citing scriptures that disapproved of homosexuality. The 3 hate speech charges, each of which carry a prison sentence of 2 years, stem from comments made in a 2004 pamphlet, also a 2018 TV show, and most recently in a tweet directed at her church leadership that was going soft on biblical teaching. The pamphlet, and in the tweet, it was actually a picture of Scripture, and she tweeted it out challenging the leadership of the church. Now, the pamphlet, very similar, it just articulates historic Christian teaching on human sexuality, and it was published by the Lutheran Foundation, Finland. The publication's editor-in-chief, who is bishop-elect of the Evangelical Lutheran Mission Diocese of Finland, also faces a charge for his role with the pamphlet. This is quite disturbing. Now, Finland's not a huge country, about 5.5 million people, and the main church, mostly Protestant, is the Evangelical Lutheran Church, and about 67% of the people in Finland are connected with, associated with, have membership in the Lutheran Church of Finland, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland. But here's the kicker. I was looking through some of this. Only about 2% of the members actually attend church on a weekly basis. Average is they attend twice a year. So there's actually been a schism within the church leadership trying to be culturally relevant, has gone soft on biblical teaching as it pertains to human sexuality. Well, that's not setting well with those who believe Scripture. And so there are those that are using the leverage of some of these hate crime laws to go after those who are speaking out. And we're going to be joined here momentarily by Paul Coleman, who is the Executive Director of ADF International. He's handling this case for Alliance Defending Freedom there in Finland. So we're trying to get connected with him, and we'll be bringing him on to talk about this case. We need to watch these things because all right, I think we've got him now. So we got Paul Coleman. So I'm going to bring Paul in. Paul just laid out the kind of the basis of this case, these pending charges for hate crimes against. Actually, we have 2 individuals here. We have the bishop-elect of the Lutheran Mission. So just go ahead and give us the status on what's happening there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me on. So Päivi Räsänen is a member of the Finnish Parliament, experienced politician, been a member of the Parliament for over 25 years, served as a government minister. She faces 3 criminal charges for so-called hate speech for various things that she has written and spoken about over the last almost 20 years on the topic of marriage and sexuality. And then one of the booklets that she wrote for a church foundation in 2004 has now been dug up, uncovered, and the publisher of that booklet, along with Päivi Räsänen, is now facing criminal charges as well. Now,
Paul, this pamphlet that was written, what was the purpose of that?
So it was, Päivi Räsänen is not only a member of Parliament, she's also a medical doctor, and she is very active in her church. Her husband is a pastor within that church denomination, and she was asked to write a booklet explaining the biblical position of marriage, of sexuality from a biblical perspective, and also some of the challenges that were taking place within Finnish society in 2004 on all of those issues. And so it was written for members of her church, her congregation, to help them think through these issues from a biblical perspective.
So this was, I mean, she's writing this for her church. This is to educate Christians on what the Bible has to say about the issue of human sexuality. And so you have the prosecutor general that has initiated multiple, actually 4, if I'm not mistaken, 4 investigations into this. This is out. I mean, it's just kind of crazy that here is someone speaking into their church. The tweet was about her church leadership. They came after her for that. Do you not have the freedom of speech and religion in Finland?
Well, it is shocking, and we're seeing more and more examples of this across Europe as so-called hate speech laws have been adopted by all of these different European countries. We're now seeing how these hate speech laws are being used and turned against Christians who believe in biblical definition of marriage between a man and a woman, and seeing them applied in lots of different areas like this. But even so, even with all of the cases we're seeing, this is particularly shocking to see that the top prosecutor of that country, there was a press release last week, there were 4 police investigations, and the prosecutor continued with 3 of them. Each one of these charges carries a maximum 2-year prison sentence. And so the general prosecutor is really going all in on this to try and convict Päivi of these crimes. And if this conviction is successful, this prosecution is successful, then no, I don't think we can say that we have freedom of speech in Finland. And of course, it's not just Finland, it's all of these other countries as well with similar laws.
Paul, we're up against a break, but can you hang on, because I want to ask you one more question that I think is very relevant to our conversation here. So if you'll stick with us, Paul is going to stick around, and we're going to be back on the other side of the break. All right, welcome back to Washington Watch. As I mentioned, this is something I want you to pay close attention to. We're talking about a member of the Finnish Parliament, Päivi Räsänen, who is facing multiple charges for violation. These are criminal charges for violation of hate speech for quoting Scripture. We're joined by Paul Coleman. He's Executive Director of ADF International, who is handling this case. Paul, thanks for sticking around. Okay, so when do you think this may go before a court?
Well, unfortunately, the whole process has already been long. The first investigation began in August 2019. The police investigations then wrapped up spring last year, and the prosecutor sat on this essentially for a whole year with all of these charges hanging over Päivi's head. We spoke to lawyers in Helsinki today. They predict that the court case will probably go through all different levels of the judicial system in Finland, because it will be precedent setting, and so it could take years. The charges will come before the district court in the next few weeks, but from that point on, it could be a very long process. And that's often what we talk about with these hate speech laws. In the process is often the punishment, because these charges hang over you for years. You're accused of these crimes. It takes years. And even if you eventually clear your name at the end of it, you would drag through the courts trying to protect your reputation for years and years.
Not to mention that they're very costly. It's a huge distraction for someone who is in the midst of this. Fortunately, ADF is defending her. People can find out more about this case and how they can support her and ADF where?
Thank you. ADFinternational.org. The case is right on our homepage. People can read all about it. And also within that page on this case, we've also set up a little way in which people can send messages of support to Päivi, and we are collecting those, sending them to her, and she's really appreciating it. She knows that the world is watching this, and she is grateful for all of the support that she's receiving.
By the way, she's a mother and a grandmother. I think she has 5 children and 7 grandchildren.
That's correct, yeah. And a member of parliament and a medical doctor, and very involved in her local church. Just a normal, lovely person.
Well, I wouldn't say she's normal. I would say she's a very active person, former interior minister for Finland, certainly a public servant. There's no question about that. She was also I think the chair of the Christian Democratic Party there. So she's been a leader in Finland. Okay, Paul, here's my last question for you, and I want to thank you for joining us. What should we in America be learning from this?
Thank you. I think that the most important thing is that if this is taking place in Finland, it could take place anywhere. It's no good thinking that it will never happen. If we think of everything that's happened in the last few years, I think we can no longer be saying things like, oh, that will never happen here. I can never imagine that happening, because we are dealing with these shocking examples in this area and many others coming up quite often now. And this absolutely could take place in the US. I'm very aware of the protections for free speech in the US context, also with Supreme Court precedent. However, we're dealing with a culture and a context in which sitting presidents are getting kicked off Twitter. The cancel culture that we're all reading about and talking about is going full steam ahead. And so what would it take for something like this to unfold in other jurisdictions? I think not very much. And so this is a warning sign to all of us to protect and defend the liberties that we hold dear within our own legal context.
Absolutely. One final question. I do have to ask you another question because the Finnish church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church, which is the largest Protestant denomination there, how vocal have they been in support of Päivi?
Well, this is one of the sad things about this, and we see this in a lot of other cases, is not supportive. So there are many Christians in Finland who are supporting her, her own church, and as I say, her husband is a pastor. So she has plenty of support within the Christian community, but a lot of the institutionalized churches have not been vocal in their support of her. And so that is, as we often see, one of the very challenging aspects to these cases.
And that, I think, is essential. When you lose the sight of biblical truth, the church loses its influence in the culture. And that's one thing I pray in America, that the church will stand firm on biblical truth, and we will preserve not only our religious freedom, but our freedom of speech as well. Paul Coleman, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.